the collaborators and myself, we based Giselle on migrants because I was very ashamed of the way Europe dealt with migrants coming from Syria, and we didn't show humanity, and we had no empathy. And Brexit is already the beginning of the end, if you like. We are in the phase of the right wing in the world. We are also in the phase of creating borders between countries. And so I really wanted, I felt that this story of these migrants need to be told. So Giselle was an opportunity to base her narrative within migrants, because this is really what I'm seeing every day and on the news, and I felt it was very relatable and important. Yes. The classical Giselle is beautiful. I love it very much. But the woman, the way she's portrayed in the original Giselle is not someone I can relate to. My mother is fierce. She's a strong feminist. And unfortunately, my wife, who is Japanese, is very calm on the outside, but she's fierce in the inside. Like, you never know what she's thinking. Japanese people, very, very calm, neutral, no emotion, but inside, like she's a volcano. And unfortunately for me, my daughter, who is 6, is also like my wife. So I have 3 women, very strong women in my life. So I wanted to be able to relate to that character as a woman of today. And it's so important that women are portrayed not through men's eyes. That's very, very important. That we don't, a lot of romantic interpretations portrays women in a very vulnerable, fragile way. My mother was a strong political activist, and she fought for women's rights all the time. So I think it rubbed off on me in a way.
Скажите, пожалуйста, а с чего вы начали?
I think the most challenging part was what Giselle means to different people. So I asked a lot of the principals, I asked the corps de ballet, I said, when does it not become Giselle? If I change it too much, when is it not Giselle? And then I asked the conductor, then I asked the orchestra, then I asked the original, some of the classical dramaturgs, and each person had a different answer. So anybody who was a musician said, well, if you change the music, it's not Giselle. And the dancer said, well, if you change the choreography, it's not Giselle. And the dramaturg said, if you change the story, it's not Giselle. So I was like, how do I make this work then? So that was very challenging. And also in England, Giselle is the most loved. Out of all the pieces, Swan Lake, everything, Giselle is sacred in England. So I was... The easy part was that the dancers and Tamara and the entire English National Ballet were on my side. And they said, we will follow you to the edge of the cliff, because we believe you, we trust you. And that was a great support, because really I've not worked with a classical ballet before. I had worked with English National Ballet and I created a small piece, but not a full-length ballet. So, but because I had their confidence, it gave me confidence. Also, there is a patriarchal system, a vertical system in classical dance infrastructure. It's inherent in the structure. It's less so in classical Indian dance, but in classical ballet you have this vertical system of hierarchy. And I just changed it to this. So it's more matriarchal, because everybody is important and everybody has a voice. So the dancers, whether you are playing Giselle or you're corps de ballet, everybody had an opinion and I would listen to everyone's. It was important because I felt everybody had to go on this journey with me, not just Giselle and Hilarion and Albert. It's a collective immersion.
Вы предвосхитили практически.
They're both difficult.
И то, и другое очень непросто.
I don't, because I don't demand them as dancers, I expect them as dancers. I demand them as people. I want to know their life. I want to know their stories. If you're going to stand on stage, then tell me the truth of who you are. The choreography is just a structure. But, for example, if you feel sadness in the story, you have to connect with some part of you that is sad. So you don't act sad, you are sad. When you are violent, then you have to connect with some story in your background where you have experienced violence. So then you don't act violent, you are violent, or you are in violence. That for me is challenging, whether I work with my dancers or dancers who don't usually work with me. This Giselle is quite dark compared to the classical version. I mean, I would make it a lot darker if I had my choice. If I would really make it dark. I mean, in my Giselle, there was a point where I made Giselle pregnant from Albert, and this is like really like I wanted to make it really chaotic. But I grew up with a mother who is a literature expert. So as a child, she was sharing stories with me, like Master and the Marguerite, like Russian literature and Greek literature and Hindu literature. So I grew up with all these. I mean, I was traumatized because you don't do that to a child. I mean, Russian literature can be very dark, but in a good way. And so in a way, a lot of my work is very dark. My mother wanted her children to have multiple viewpoints, never one viewpoint, because one viewpoint is very dangerous. And so, you know, I grew up Muslim, culturally, but my mother told me Hindu mythology, Greek mythology, Russian mythology, Gilgamesh story. I remember at the age of, will you remember? Do you want to say that? Story, I think I was 10 or 11, and she said to me, you know, there is the story of Isaac in Christianity and Islam also, isn't it Isaac? Abraham and Isaac. And is it Isaac, the father? The father? Or Abraham? Abraham. So Abraham, and so she said to me, like in the night before I go to sleep, she said, you know, there's this story of Abraham where God asks Abraham, will you sacrifice your, no, an angel asks Abraham to sacrifice his first son to show his love and devotion for God. And then at the moment of killing the son, Isaac, an angel came and said, don't worry, this was a test. And then they put an animal, and so they cut the animal instead. That's pretty traumatizing. And so I asked my mother, I remember I asked her straight after, Ma, if God asked you to show your love, would you kill me? And she said no. So in 2013, I called my mother up and I said, Ma, do you remember you told me this story where you told me this story about belief and, you know, believing in God, and then, you know, you would sacrifice, and then you traumatized me because you said no, that you wouldn't kill me. So I was very confused, and she said, I don't remember telling you this story. Maybe I did. And I said, but if you did say that, because I remember you said it, why would you confuse me? Why would you give a moral story about killing your son to show faith to God, and then you say the exact opposite, that I wouldn't? And she went quiet, and then she said, a minute later, she said, well, I probably wanted to plant a seed of doubt. Because if you love something, you will question it. And to doubt something, to question it, is the beginning of love. So in a sense, that's why I'm who I am, probably. I'm always doubting everything, like questioning everything. I'm always traumatized. But it's very important to question everything and never take it for granted. The classical Giselle is so important, but don't take it for granted. You have to question everything all the time. Well, I chose Tamara and Alina because they're so experienced. And Alina is so different to Tamara. Alina is internally extremely strong, but she can be extremely fragile on the outside. There's a different kind of quality to her. She's very ethereal. Tamara is Spanish, so she's like a force of nature. You know, she's fierce. And so initially, Tamara was the first half, Giselle. Alina was my second half, Giselle. And then I said, Tamara, watch the second half, watch Alina and learn from her, and Alina learn from Tamara how to do the first half. Because somehow Alina is closer to spirituality. She's more ambiguous, she's more untouchable, she's ethereal. And Tamara is grounded, you know, she's here, she's present. So two very different characters that helped me create the Giselle with them.
Тамара. А давайте немножко пофантазируем.
You would really have to fantasize, huh? Especially my ballet teacher. I'm the opposite of ballet. You know, I go to the earth very quickly. I'm very grounded. I'm very fast. Ballet dancers go up. I go down. So my entire style is very different. But I find Hilarion very interesting. I mean, we were almost going to call this show Hilarion. Almost. And then I reminded myself, no, we have to call it Giselle. Because I was really focused on the original Hilarion, who's not in the film. The original Hilarion is now in the Royal Opera House as a star. His name is Cesar, I think from Cuba. South America for sure. Incredible dancer, and he is so dangerous as a character. Like, he embodied Hilarion. So I found Hilarion closer to human beings because I felt the complexity of his struggle of being loyal to his clan, Giselle's family, that's his family, but also the struggle to wanting to be better with money. So he was playing the game between Albert's family, the landlord, and so there was a more complexity. But if you really want me to fantasize, then I'd love to play Mirta.
Если уж совсем фантазировать, то, конечно, я бы хотела называть Мирту. На пуантах? На пуантах?
Yeah. I mean, I would be a scary Mirta. I mean, you know, no blonde hair, like really big, you know. Yeah.
Мне кажется, я был бы.
This is where I become a little bit tough because I want the collaborators to immerse themselves in my work too, like the dancers. So my composer was there all the time. Zenzo Lamagna, and he's a very close collaborator of mine. But I put a condition. I said 80% of the music has to be the original. But you can put it anywhere you like. You can change the sound. You can change the orchestration with Gavin, who did the orchestration. You can add other music sounds, but the melodies have to start 80%, no, about 70% has to be the original. But someone who knows the music really well, like a conductor, will recognize the 70% of the music. But for somebody who doesn't, it will just sound very different. It's a tough question.
Сложный вопрос.
I studied Indian classical dance. Like ballet dancers study from very small. I studied Indian classical dance from very small. It has the same rigor as ballet. A big difference in Indian classical dance is the male dancer learns female roles and male roles. And the female dancer learns male roles and female roles.
Я с детства занималась.
I mean it slightly lightly, but in Indian classical dance, The reason why this happens, where the male dancer has to do all the roles, or the female has to do all the roles, is because we're so full of ego that we don't like to dance with someone else. We can't share the stage. So that's why we don't have so much group choreography, it's always solo. In an orchestra, you can have 3 violin or 4 cello players. It will never happen in Indian music. You'll never have 2 sitar players. They will compete, and they will try and outshow the other. That's why everyone is a soloist. So because you're a soloist, the gender fluidity, because you have to play all the characters, you shift between gender much more easy, especially through Hindu mythology. It's much more gender friendly, the fluidity. Western culture is not. And it's because our masters wanted us to learn not just from one perspective, but from the character, the other character you play, from their perspective. There are 2 characters from Hindu mythology: Krishna, who plays the most loved gods, and Radha, the one he loves, and she loves him.
В индийской мифологии есть 2 крупных персонажа. Это Кришна, который играет...
They were children. Krishna would always trouble and tease Radha. That was his way of showing his love. So one day, when they grew up, Krishna went to war, and Radha thought, well, you know, I'm so annoyed that he's always tricking me. I'm going to fool the whole community and fool him. So one day, Radha walks out, and she dresses up just like Krishna. The eye makeup, the peacock feather in the hair, even the clothes. And everybody thought, wow, this is Krishna, but he should be in war. From the war. And saw Radha dressed up as Krishna. And he looked at her and he said, wow, you really did a really good job. You look just like me. I mean, like amazing. Like all the detail is perfect. One mistake. You made one mistake. And she says, she looked in the mirror and she said, no, I'm even behaving like you. Everything is right. What is the mistake? Right now, the love you have in your eyes is for Krishna. It's not for Radha.
Вот твоя ошибка.
Question, wow.
Хороший вопрос, спасибо большое.
You know, my father, I was just telling the story recently. My father, ever since I was a child, my community, Bangladeshi community, had an independence. They lived through a war. My father and mother lived through a war. In 1971, Bangladesh became independent from Pakistan. So when my father's community came to London and the children were born, they wanted the children to be highly academic. That's the way to survive. And so all the children went to private school except me. I didn't get in. So in one year, my father was very frustrated. So in one year, my father would say, you are not worth it, because I could not go to private school. So I grew up most of my childhood thinking that I'm not worth anything. In the other ear, my mother said, anything is possible. You can do anything. My father is much older now, and I have a lot of anger towards him. But my natural instinct is to take revenge. Because all my life he has made me feel unimportant, irrelevant. But my mother says, but then you become him. Is more stronger than revenge. Don't become the enemy, or don't become him. Your revenge or your anger will transform you into him, because that's what he was. He was very frustrated. And so if anything, yes, maybe it's romantic, but my mother always said to me that forgiveness is a tool that we have lost, is a skill that we have lost, or we don't have empathy anymore. In the space of 2 decades, just 2 decades, the millennium decades, we've had, it's all about I. myself and I, which is iPad, iPhone, iMac, iTunes, iMovie. My parents' generation was a generation